Outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, and I can't stand it. So, Arthur, welcome everybody. But Arthur, this what is?
What are you all pissed off about?
Yeah,
What's
I'm pissed off
outrageous?
today. I'm pissed off today. Don't get me. Okay, so this came across my desk. This bit of news, as you all know, it's the Olympics, right? And
Yeah.
so there's an article that is talking about how they're so upset already. Talk. Okay, so
Seems
for
like you're getting a little
environmental,
hot under the collar there, Ben.
I feel like I got to pour myself a drink.
All right,
for
give me the scoop here. What's going on?
So, for environmental reasons, as it's been stated, or this is the proclamation, for environmental reasons, the French will not be providing air conditioning to the athletes of the game. So, they'll be staying in wherever they're staying, but no air conditioning for environmental reasons. The Americans are so pissed at this because, we're used to air conditioning and you don't want to change things for the athletes last moment. You want consistency, right? And familiarity. So the Americans apparently are bringing their own air conditioning to the Olympics. Our athletes are not going to go without. They're going to have the comfort of air conditioning. And so Americans are having to install their own air conditioning to keep their athletes comfortable because the French won't do it because they're saying for environmental reasons. This pisses me off.
Okay, I can see how it's pissing you off and getting you, heated up. Sorry, pardon the pun. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a hot summer,
It's
hotter than
August.
usual, and it's getting hotter every year, pretty
Yeah.
much around the globe.
Yeah.
Um, that's one thing. But from what I understand, I was looking into this a little bit when you first mentioned it. Uh, it's not just the Americans who are upset about this. I mean, there's other countries who are also bringing their air conditioners, and like, I just think,
Uh-huh.
I mean, from my perspective, it seems like this is just a bad hosting decision. I mean, you're hosting an event
Yes.
that you've been planning for a decade almost,
Hmm.
and you're saying, oh, by the way, yeah, it's going to be a little uncomfortable. Bring your, no air conditioning. It's going to be hot. We'll, hopefully, you can just accommodate because we want to save the environment.
They're being
Uh,
cheapskates, is what it is.
I don't know. I mean, now I know you traveled throughout Europe.
Mm.
Um, have you been like, you haven't lived in France, right?
Well,
Yes.
but it's not just France. To be fair, it's not just this is not just a French thing, right? And
Okay.
they have a generally a dysfunctional, in my opinion, as an American, I feel like Europeans have a very dysfunctional relationship with air conditioning. They think it's like something evil. Like
Mm.
they think it's something bad. They don't like to use it. They have these weird tales like, oh yeah, keeping the AC on while you sleep, you're gonna grow a horn or something like that. You know what I mean?
What does a European do to stay cool otherwise? I mean, do they not? I mean, I'm sure some people have it, but maybe most people don't. Maybe because of the relatively unextreme heat that they typically have,
Wait,
but it
unextreme?
has been changed.
No, it can be quite extreme in Southern Europe, like in Spain and Italy. It's
Yeah, yeah.
miserable because here's the thing, right? And this is the fallacy of the statement by the French, and they're saying that we aim. Okay, we aim. The operative word is we aim, which means in our minds we think, but in reality we don't know. That's what we aim means, right? So they said
Right,
we
isn't it?
we aim to keep temperatures between 73 and 78. Now, those temperatures are in of themselves too high. Secondly, it doesn't even take into consideration the humidity. And humidity in Europe in the summer, or really in most places, is absolutely miserable, right? And so this is how I don't know, they're not bothered by it for some reason. I don't know what's going on.
As the very wise philosopher Yoda once said,
Yeah.
there is no try.
Yes. There isn't.
You don't.
There isn't.
They're going to try to get you to close to that range. I don't know. When I say Europe has been relatively mild in its heat, I know. I mean, there were forest fires. There were massive fires in Greece, and it was a heat wave across much of Europe,
Mm,
especially in the last several summers. It's been increasing. Um, but when we say the culture and how the culture thinks about heat,
hmm
um, that's centuries in the making, right? How they think about it. What do they do to stay cool? And then when air conditioning was invented, all right, let's say that's somewhere in the 20th century,
Yeah.
uh, then, what did they do to stay cool?
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know that. I mean, maybe they can tolerate heat better. I don't know, but I also feel like the whole thing about using or not using air conditioning is just an absolute waste of life, because it's like it's just a part of life to use air conditioning. It's a bit like saying it's a bit like vilifying people who use cars. It's vilifying, and people do. There are people like this, right? Like, why are you taking a plane? It's just part of modern living. You know what I mean? But anyway, the fact that they're making an issue out of it, and then the worst of it is that they're taking this environmental angle when they don't care about the environment. It's all publicity, and it's just a big fat fallacy, is what it is.
you sound like a very angry American.
I am. I'm sick of this.
Okay, well, I mean, as I said, I mean, it's probably going to not sit well for a lot of people besides Americans. I mean, you have these athletes who
Mhm.
are trying to perform at their best,
Yes.
and you're an athlete. You've been competitive, and you've also, you're
Yes.
still engaged in pretty good physical regimen, and so when people are training literally for years and perhaps their life to perform at their peak, they don't want to be uncomfortable and
Yes.
before a competition. They need to relax. They need to be mentally well. They need to be physically well. They need to be ready. Uh, and so this isn't, I don't know, this is not the
This
best
is a way to snuff
design.
out the competition, I guess, and definitely give yourself the home court advantage, I suppose. Maybe that's what they're really trying to do. Maybe it's not about energy savings. Maybe it's about just, you know, getting a leg up here.
Well, I mean, if you think about who are the athletes who are going to do the best in extreme heat, or let's say becoming less and less comfortable. I mean, who would that be? I mean, we American athletes are pretty resilient. I mean, they go through pretty grueling training regimens, and they train in all kinds of different environments.
Yeah.
So I don't know who would do well in this.
I'm not quite sure people from really hot countries, but then those people from really hot countries, they're also used to air conditioning. And like, if you're from the Middle East, your air conditioning is on all the time unless, your power gets shut off, but that's a whole different story. But like if you're from Asia, they use air conditioning all the time. No problem there. It's just that Europeans have a weird thing about air conditioning. It's very strange. So what I've observed living here in Southern Europe is that, like, if it's hot during the day, they might not turn on their air conditioning, but instead they'll lower their shutters. Those like security shutters that sometimes you see in America, which is sort of like you only see them in bad neighborhoods, right? Those, you know what I'm talking about, those metal security shutters.
Yeah, yeah,
So they're in America, that's like crime ridden and poverty if you see those. But
yeah.
here in Europe, that's de rigueur. It's just normal. Every place they have those shutters. So what they do is they just lower those shutters. And so they live in darkness. Now keep in mind they also don't like to turn on lights because again they have a thing about using energy even though it's LED. So they don't turn on lights. So they literally have their houses in darkness during the day. And that's how they live. That's normal to them. Now, obviously, your upper class European is not living like this because let's say they've been exposed to other ways of living rather than your average person here. But your average person here will live like that. They won't turn on the air conditioning. They'll live in darkness because darkness will cool the house better, I suppose.
Yeah, you kind of touched on something interesting because you're reminded of something when I went to many, many years ago. I went to Pakistan. There was a city in Pakistan that is known for its heat. In
Mm,
fact, they had some sayings for it. But I went into the old part of the city,
yeah.
and that's one thing I noticed right off the bat. And so I'm going to bring this circle this back really quickly to Europe. And the point here is that, and I think this is one of the arguments being made by the French, that they have architecture and that they're thoughts and feelings and philosophy of architecture is such that houses should be designed to be cooler. So people also live, like you said, in close proximity to each other, meaning the buildings are close in proximity to each other. And you've been in Spain a lot, you've been in Portugal, and you see those buildings.
Yes.
So buildings are close, or streets are relatively narrow,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
Density,
means you
yeah.
don't get a lot of sunlight coming in and hitting the ground in those cities, in the closer part of those cities, right? The closest part of the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's designed in such a way that it's cooler. And that was the same thing when I visited Multan, which is one of the oldest cities in the world. Like it is, if you look up one of the oldest cities in the world, look up Multan and you'll see the old city. And you're like, whoa, yeah. And so that's parts of India too. But the point is that they designed it in such a way, their thinking is such that they think you should be able to stay cooler, with shutters and with
I,
staying. I don't know.
these are tactics, these are hacks we employed 200 years ago. That's not, but the thing of it is that it's, again, it doesn't take into account, you can't get rid of humidity. There's no way. I've had Europeans tell me, oh, we don't have AC, but we have a fan. I'm like, what am I going to do with a fan? Just take, what am I going to do? What's this going to do for my life? I need air conditioning. I need to remove the humidity. Don't you understand? That is why also the typical European home smells terrible, because they don't dehumidify, and they have mold. No big deal. Yeah, that's how they are.
Do you mind if you'll indulge me? I'm coming across an article
Yeah,
from NPR
of course.
on this,
Yeah.
and maybe I can just read a few paragraphs, short paragraphs of the.
Yes, give us
That's right.
just give us some highlights from it.
Okay, so the headline is Paris wants AC-free Olympic Village. Wants an AC-free Olympic Village. Team USA and others aren't so chill with it. Oh, I like the headline.
Uh-huh.
Team USA and others aren't so chill with it. So here's what it says. A month out from the Summer Olympics in Paris, air conditioning is an increasingly hot topic. NPR is really bad about these puns.
These stupid puns, yes. It gets people to click, but yeah.
Okay, is an increasingly hot topic. In their effort to host what they're calling the greenest ever games, organizers chose not to install air conditioning at the complex where thousands of athletes and officials will stay throughout the season. Instead, the athletes will be cooled by a system of water pipes running beneath the floorboards. This
Uh,
village was designed to avoid the need for air conditioning, even in very, very high temperatures, in order to maintain comfortable temperatures, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo said in March. Okay, that's interesting. So there's something about these
oh my
water
God.
pipes they're going to have in the floorboards?
Yeah, okay. So I actually have stayed in a place in Madrid, a brand new construction apartment, no air conditioning, and it had the cooled floors, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like the same pipes that do heated floors, but it's cool. And let me tell you something, it does not work. It doesn't work. It's just, and if they expended any effort, money, and even any brain power into creating this, then I'm sorry, but it was a complete waste, because it does not bring comfort. Not when you're talking about,
cool,
35-degree temperatures and humidity. It does not take away humidity. I don't know what these people don't get about the air conditioning thing is, you can cool a room, but if you can't get rid of the humidity, you will not bring comfort.
But your feet were cool.
I didn't even stay long enough. When I discovered that there was no air conditioning, I canceled the reservation and then left. I will not stay in a place where the air conditioning doesn't function right. I can't. I'm not European. I can't do it.
You voted with your feet.
Yes, I took to my feet in terror and I left, because I think it's outrageous.
All right. Well, a couple more paragraphs. So really, really quickly.
Go ahead.
So it says, let's see, densely populated Paris has the highest risk of heat-related deaths of any European city. And a new report
another good reason to turn off the AC. Yeah, go on.
And a new report warns that high temperatures could pose a deadly threat to Olympians this year. Officials aim to keep the rooms at between 73 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit and will also provide fans.
Are the French lizards? How are they? Who can tolerate 79 degrees?
I don't think I've ever set my temperature in my house to 79 degrees.
I mean, you might do that if you're going away. If you're going away on vacation, you might put it at 79. But I don't, it's just very strange.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to annihilate everybody so they
Oh,
can
by
get
the
all the
way,
medals.
some of our listeners are, I'm sure, they don't speak Fahrenheit, so we might have to convert.
79 Fahrenheit is probably 28 degree. No, no. Yeah, like 28, 29 degrees. I mean, it's fine if you're at the beach and it's that temperature, but not inside of a house. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Plus humidity.
yeah. Well, yeah, and it's just they're doing this for the athletes. That's what I don't get. I mean,
Well, it's very twisted. They're making it seem like they're coming at it like, oh, we're so high and mighty. We are not only are we doing good for the environment, but look at this innovative new thing that we're able to offer the world. No air conditioning. You know what I mean?
well, interesting that they weren't able to convince all the hotels who are hosting all the spectators and fans, to say, you know what, let's cut out air conditioning. Like let's just shut it off. In fact, keep the temperature at around 79 degrees.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
see how well that would
Exactly.
go.
Exactly. And
Uh,
but yeah, I don't know. I really don't understand why they're so against air conditioning. I don't know, because you never can get a straight answer. But I suspect it has something to do with the fact that they're too cheap to pay for air. They're too cheap to pay the electricity. However, I would argue that, you know what, it's just something that you need. It's like, yeah, you might not like the price of gas, but you need to get places. So that's just part of life. You have to pay for it. Now, if you don't want to, I'm not coming into your house and telling you that you have to turn on your air conditioning, but at the same time, don't tell other people they should not use it either,
yeah,
or withhold it. That's really tacky, I think, withholding it.
yeah. So here's another quick
Yeah.
reference here. It's a quote. Um, in our conversations with athletes, this was a very high priority and something that the athletes felt was a critical component in their performance capability and the predictability and consistency of what they're accustomed to, she said. This, by the way, is Sarah Hirschland, CEO of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And this is about their decision to bring air conditioners. She said, yeah, it's kind of important to
Yeah.
our athletes.
Well, if it's too hot to sleep and it gets more humid at night, if you can't sleep, you're not going to perform. See, this is, I just don't get it.
Well, this kind of brings me to maybe connecting to one of the other topics we could touch on, which was American exceptionalism, because, this idea, and you had mentioned this as a possible thing we could dive into, and there's a relationship here because, okay, now with this thing going on, okay, the Americans said, you know what, you're not going to give us air conditioning, we're going to bring our own. And
Bravo. I was never prouder to be American than when I read that.
yeah, and not only, I mean, this is not obviously the Olympic athletes themselves deciding, this is the U.S. Olympic Committee saying, we are going to pay for and
Yes.
provide for our athletes for their
Yes. Good.
comfort. Yeah,
Good. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, like,
Well,
think about it. Is that like a reflection of Americans being exceptional in their view of themselves?
I think what it is like, you know what? We're not. What it is we're not going to accept your bullshit. You know what? We're not going to even waste our time educating you on the need for it, because there's obviously a chasm. And this is the thing: when there is such a chasm between your understanding of something and somebody else's understanding of something, don't waste your time. Just do what you have to do. And that's what the Americans are doing. They're like, you know what, whatever, we're only going to be here for a month, we're going to clean up with the gold medals, and this is what we need to do to do what we need to do. And so we're going to bring our own air conditioning. We're not going to waste our time arguing with you. We're going to just take care of business, and we're going to do it our way. Good for them. Good for them.
Well, to dispel any sense that this is about American exceptionalism,
Yeah.
the Washington Post reported earlier this month, this is from the same article I was reading. The Washington Post reported earlier this month that Canada, Great Britain, Italy, Germany, Greece, Denmark, Australia, amongst many other countries, are deciding to bring their own air conditioning. So they're
Okay.
doing it too.
So are they doing it because the Americans are doing it, or are they doing it because, see, this is my question now.
These are
Who's
independent decisions of each of their national Olympic committees. I mean, these,
okay.
yeah. I mean, this is like, okay, you want to do this, France? Okay, that's not what we want.
That's that just real I think I don't know if they're realizing this or they're so arrogant about this whole thing that, but it just makes them look really bad. It makes them look really bad. If you can't afford to host properly, don't host, right?
Yeah,
As
yeah.
if, Americans in Paris isn't by itself contentious enough. As if we don't have enough problems to deal with when we're in Paris, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And you know how when you're reading a news article, it'll give you like the related articles there?
Yeah.
One of the related articles in the article that I'm reading from NPR is from NPR also, but the title is Heat Waves in Europe Killed More Than 61,000 People Last Summer, a study estimates.
Oh, but it's okay because, the environment benefited from it, from those people's deaths.
Yeah.
Um,
Boy.
yeah.
Are you going to any of these Olympic activities? And
No, no, I'm not. And actually, they've issued a statement saying, guys, stay away. Just don't go to Paris to watch the Olympics. They're telling people don't go, actually.
because
And
of the crazy amount of traffic and stuff.
yeah, and all that. Yes. And plus, I'm a kind of person where I am uncomfortable in huge crowds anyway. And now they're talking about no air conditioning. That's even worse.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that wouldn't be for you though.
no.
I mean,
What?
you could get your air conditioning.
I could? Are you
I
sure?
mean,
I
you'll
wouldn't
be
be.
at a hotel,
You mean I wouldn't be treated just like the athletes?
right? You'd be
um,
treated better.
no, but let me tell you something, Other. So a lot of these places they have air conditioning, right? But I will tell you something. In American hotels, the air conditioning will be icy cold. In these hotel rooms, two things can happen. Either they're terrible, they don't cool properly, or their thermostat is good for nothing. So not only do they not like air conditioning, but stemming from the dislike of air conditioning, they don't even do it properly. So you'll set the temperature, and guess what? That temperature doesn't mean anything. This happened to me many times, and most recently, even a couple of weeks ago at a hotel. Whatever temperature you set at, it doesn't mean anything. It's just nonsense. So basically, it's just on or off. So the air conditioning is constantly blowing, and it becomes icy cold, or it's just off. It's not like a real thermostat. And you wonder why they are using so much energy. You can't even get a thermostat to do the right to work properly, you know?
Well, I
So
guess it depends on what kind of hotel you stayed at. But I mean, some hotels, depending on their age, they're not designed for air conditioning.
no,
They're
it was.
added later.
No, this was a four-star hotel, and it was built probably within the last 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it was a business hotel. There's no reason. So no, everything, but that's just how it is here. They First of all, they have crappy air conditioning, and second of all, um, even if it works, it doesn't work quite right. It's not like the American. Now, I did go to another hotel. I did end up changing hotels. I went to another one. That one was fine. Not only was the air conditioning good, but it was silent, so you never actually felt. I'm very picky about air conditioning, so
Yeah.
I like the room to be cool without actually feeling like air is blowing at me. I don't want to feel a draft. I just want the room to be cool and dehumidified. And so the other place I went to was good.
Such an American.
Yes. Well, we're born with the air conditioning remote in our hand, I told this one guy.
So, I mean, you've been throughout Europe, and
Yeah.
would you say, like, you were alluding to the idea that what's happening with the Paris Olympics and heat and the AC stuff, the whole
Hmm.
controversy, that this is reflective of European uh, approaches, or sometimes, the experiences you've had about what they feel about air conditioning. Now, would you say this is something you've experienced in many countries where you go around Europe and they're like, "Wow, why are you such a stickler for air conditioning? It's not a what's a big deal?" And we think of it as a big deal, but I don't know. I mean,
Well, listen, air conditioning is not a big deal unless it's not available, then it's a big deal. It's not something, obviously, when we're in the US, Americans are not going around talking to each other about hey, how's your
Right.
air conditioning today, Arthur? you know it's a non-issue. Okay, it's a non-issue, but it's made an issue by Europeans because of their resistance. It's like saying to somebody, like, we never talk about hot water. However, it becomes an issue in some parts of Europe because they can't get hot water done right either, where it cycles on and off, or that their tanks are too small, or some nonsense. I basically, I've spoken to other Americans who travel in Southern Europe, and they say the same thing. They're like, it's just like 30 years behind the US when it comes to things like that. Like, how can they not get these things right? Why are these things even an issue when they're a non-issue in the US?
Well, you know what's ironic about this whole discussion is that one of the points that the French are making are correct, meaning there is a green issue at play here. The idea that global warming is occurring is now undisputable, and
Yes.
right, there's that. And so the question is, how do you want to respond? And they respond, I think, in a somewhat odd way, because we have noted throughout the world that the heat waves have caused, and there was an article I just referred to seconds ago,
Yes.
minutes
Yeah.
ago, that they have caused deaths. They have caused heat. Do you remember about the heat waves we've had in Chicago that killed hundreds of people? The lack of electrical grid operating that killed hundreds, if not more, people in Texas. There was also one in Seattle.
Mm.
Hundreds of, this is Seattle, okay?
Wow.
This
Okay.
is, I think, a year or two ago. Hundreds of people died from the heat. All right. They didn't say it was, okay, you know what? Let's just kind of deal with it and, deal with this environmental catastrophe, or that's the environmental change that's occurring, by saying, well, the problem is air conditioning. We need to keep these people cool, so in a way, so that they're not dying first, and then
Mhm.
now we can start figuring out how we can kind of move and live more efficiently. But I don't know, these people are dying, and
They always like to use that as an excuse. The environmental card is so overplayed, I tell you. It has very little ultimately to do with the environment, and just everything to do with money. That's what it is. And they're playing the environmental card, and I find it to be disgusting. Really, it is.
I mean, I personally believe we have to do things to address environmental issues. The thing is, a lot of the things that are being done are superficial. They don't
Yes.
really don't really do anything. For example, uh, I was visiting in-laws once in Canada, and they were required in this place where I was visiting to compost,
Hmm.
okay, and also to recycle, right? And that's good. Recycling is good. But if you look at really what's happening with the whole recycling industry,
Hmm.
the vast majority of the things that you put in that recycling bin
Oh, yeah.
get thrown in the trash.
I heard about this. I heard about this. Yes. Europe was sending so much, quote, recycling to China. I think this was during the pandemic. China didn't even know what to do with it. They ended up burying it rather than actually recycling it. So all of the stuff that Europeans were saving up for recycling, it didn't even get recycled.
Yeah. And then you look at the sources of a lot of the greenhouse gases, things that people don't even pay attention to, that I know something about because I worked in this field. A lot of it comes from, did you know it comes from ships
Oh, I
and
didn't know that.
cows? Okay. Like cows in India.
Oh, that's why they're saying eating beef is bad for the environment. Okay.
Well, no, I'm saying cows because of flatulence.
Is that really? Wow.
Yeah, it's all the methane that's being
I,
released by animals.
I had no idea. They ought
Anyway,
to eat less, I don't know, cabbage? I don't know. Um, no,
anyway,
this is virtue signaling, Arthur. There's virtue signaling, and it's gross.
yeah, but we digress about Paris and the French, the people of the France.
Yes, it's just the environmental card is overplayed. It's overplayed because I guarantee you that if somebody else was forking the bill, they would. If somebody else was paying, they'd be like, oh yeah, let's have air conditioning, keep it on 24. You know what, for that matter, is not a refrigerator a form of air conditioning? Why don't they turn off their refrigerator? Why don't they just, use no refrigerator? That's a good way to save energy. If if that's how they're gonna roll, then that's what I'm gonna tell the French. Everybody turn off your refrigerator. Yeah, because that's air conditioning. Refrigerators, same thing.
That is true. It's just very strong air conditioning concentrated in a small space.
Yeah, so I think Europeans need to turn off their refrigerator, and that's it. Start getting used to eating, raw chicken. I don't know.
Let me play devil's advocate to this whole thing and say, okay, you know what? I kind of get it. I see what the French are doing. This is an opportunity to send a message to the world, because the world is going to be focusing their eyes, their ears, their attention on Paris, at least for that month, And so Paris and France has an opportunity to say, send a message to the world about what we need to do, what's important. They're trying to send a message. That's what they're doing.
So the message they're ultimately sending, or at least the subtext of it is, to me, the subtext is, we're virtue signaling and we're also cheapskates. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's not how you host. That's not how you host. It's yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, look, France is part of the EU. It's Paris is it's an economically prosperous city. They should not be like this. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, so here's another thing in this article. So the mayor of Paris, apparently it says, Hidalgo, who has pledged to make Paris climate neutral, whatever that, climate neutral by 2050, said that compared to a conventional project, the carbon impact of the athletes' village will be reduced by 45% during construction and throughout the Olympic cycle. Built between July and September, the village will host 15,600 Olympic athletes and sports officials and 9,000 Paralympic athletes, according to this. All right. Afterwards, the 125-acre site will become a zero-carbon, eco-friendly residential and commercial neighborhood. Sounds nice.
Okay. You do know that by not hosting, you do know, though, that by not hosting at all, by having no Olympics, that would even further reduce the carbon footprint. You do realize that, don't you, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor?
they could have just said, you know what? We could save a lot of carbon. How about we just say no thank you to the International Olympic Committee? We won't host. That's our contribution to the world.
So now what he's saying is that we want attention on Paris. We want all the money to come into Paris, but we don't want to put out any carbon. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to, they want to spend less, in other words, but we still want all the money to come to Paris. So I think is very one-sided there as well.
All right. The very last paragraph in this article, it's short. What matters to me is that these buildings, these flats, will become a neighborhood where people from, I can't pronounce this, L'Île Saint-Denis,
Saint Denis,
Saint-Quentin and Saint-Denis in the Paris suburbs will live. Okay, this is where people will live, she told Reuters in March. These new buildings won't need air conditioning, so we're working for the long term.
Oh my God. So now a selling feature of these, the selling point is no air conditioning. I mean, maybe they could make it a greater selling point by having no toilets, no hot water. That would even make it a better selling point. This is the problem with this way of thinking, is that, okay, this is the problem. They're thinking, okay, it's bad for the environment, so we're not going to use it. Whereas the American way of doing it is, no, we are not going to not be comfortable. We are still going to use air conditioning. We're just going to find alternative sources of energy that's clean. That's how we are as Americans. We're not going to change our lifestyle. We're going to just change the way we maintain our lifestyle in a way that will still reduce the carbon footprint, as opposed to, just turn off all the lights, all the AC, everything, and let's live in darkness. That's good for the environment. Whereas Americans will find alternate sources of energy so that we can continue living as the greatest country in the world, while at the same time not increasing our carbon footprint.
Well,
Thank you
you
very
know,
much.
as
Thank
we
you.
as we conclude our talk, perhaps over the
Yes.
next 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I want us to bring this back to America, and I'll tell
Okay.
you why.
Yes.
Because 4 years from now,
Ah, yes.
where are the Olympics?
Los Angeles.
Your hometown, baby.
Yes, and we are ready because we've hosted it before.
And not only have we hosted before, I can tell you they are going to make statements. They're
Mhm.
going to be sending a message out to the world on how they're going to handle it, how they're going to do this. And I can definitely foresee if they haven't, I'm sure all these decisions are already been made by now.
Yeah.
But maybe we ought to look into it to see what Los Angeles is going to do for the next Olympics in terms of the environment. One of the things I would guess they would do is to like invest huge amounts of money into transportation systems that would,
Mhm.
move people around uh, efficiently. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
gas powered buses, trains, light rail, whatever it is. They would probably put stuff down if they haven't already.
Yes, well, apparently, LA got the Olympics. One of the reasons was because they don't need to build extra infrastructure. All the buildings, the venues are already there, which
Yeah.
made LA more attractive. So I guess LA is gonna be able to do it without an expenditure of too much, investment. That's what's been said.
Yeah, but I'm sure just as they did back then, it
Hmm.
was revolutionary when Los Angeles hosted the Olympics last time because I think it was the first, if not one of the first. I think it was the first to be profitable.
Oh, is that right? Oh, leave it
Yeah,
to LA to know how to
yeah.
turn
I
a
mean,
profit.
they ran it really. Who was it? Peter Uberoth or somebody?
Uh-huh.
Um, I forgot who it was, but when they did it, they made it incredible. They not incredibly. It was because Olympics were historically losing money. That's
Hmm.
what it's like. Yes, you're going to invest money. You're going to bring in a lot of people, but you're going to lose money on the balance sheet. You're going to lose money. They made money. They made a few $100 million at the end of the day, at the end of the Olympics, and they ran it really well. But they also did it in an American way. Like
Yeah.
it was, it was beautiful and it was big, um, and so I think this is going to be an opportunity for also to put, not that America needs to be put on the stage at the forefront, because we're always kind of there, but it's an
Hmm.
opportunity to say, here's our message to the world. This
It
is what,
reinforces our message. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that message would be something about, where we should be setting the direction of the world over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years
Mm.
in terms of how we deal with the environment or how we deal with each other as a planet and people and all this stuff. It's and the message in Olympics has often been about this idea of accepting individual excellence and the having a national identity and being proud of your national identity and waving that flag and doing stuff for your country and representing your country. But it can also be more. And I think they're going to have an opportunity to do that. We'll see.
Yes, and I think it will be done with a great spirit of generosity, poise, and elegance, as the way Americans like to host things, which means air conditioning for everybody.
Air
um,
conditioning for everybody.
Everybody, even on the street. Yeah, I think they'll do fine. Um, yeah, I think that LA will be it will be a great city for that. And no one, I mean, I'm not surprised that they are able to turn a profit. They have like American athletes behind all this, big business. They have, Americans attending these events. They have Hollywood and celebrities,
Oh, yeah.
backing all of this. Yeah, no
The
one, I'm
amount
not
of
surprised.
sponsorship. Well, you got to think about, you cannot deny the significance of the corporate
Yeah.
involvement by corporate America, which is big globally. and then to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, we'll pay for this and we'll sponsor, you know, Apple. Apple
Right.
will sponsor this
Yeah.
and Google will sponsor that. And oh
Yep.
my God, you know they're going to jump in.
Everything is going to be the way it should be done. And the thing of it is that Americans aren't like wasting their time counting beans, like, oh yeah, like, like how they're doing here, let's turn off the AC. Yeah, you should be, instead of wasting your time counting beans, you should be taking those beans and growing them sky high, stocks sky high. That's what Americans do. We don't waste our time counting little beans.
And
We
I'll also contrast with what the French are doing with AC, with what Qatar, the country, did
mm,
with the World Cup. They one thing they did is they changed they changed the time frame during which they were going to host it because they didn't want to host it in the middle of the Middle East in the peak of summer.
yeah.
They did change it by a few months, but it's still going to be hot. One of the things they did was redesign and design some of those stadiums to be air conditioned outdoors.
Wow.
Yeah, they were, and they did it with a zero carbon footprint approach, meaning it would have been, and I these stadiums are already done and gone. Some of them were taken apart because some of them were temporary, but they were powered by the sun. Okay, they were powered by the sun and collected, energy from the heat of the sun and powered up the air conditioning units that were, you know, providing comfort to tens of thousands of people in a stadium. I mean, that's
Right.
innovative. I don't think
Yes, I
it's
think.
innovative to say no air conditioning.
Well, I think that definitely thinking big, thinking smart, and being innovative like that, that's what drives humanity forward. It's not with a contraction type of attitude of, oh yeah, let's just stop doing this, let's not do that, no this, no that, this off, that off. That doesn't move humanity forward. It's being innovative and, thinking ahead and thinking smart. That's what moves humanity forward. So then, yes, there are certain countries that are like that, and then unfortunately, there are countries that aren't. They just crawl into a fetal position, just curl up into a fetal position, and they think that that'll save the world.
Yeah,
But
and
don't take us with you. Don't take us with you. We're not interested.
yeah, and maybe this is a good segue for whatever we do choose to talk about next time, because I think there's something to this idea that the thing about the United States that makes it very different from other countries is this idea of kind of always reinventing itself and also being innovative in its ideas. This is true of American corporations. This is true of individuals who have sort of sometimes recreated themselves, and branded themselves in different ways. But it's also based on this history of constant change and dynamism and immigration, all of that. And you and I are products of that, in fact.
Well, that is one of the tenets of American exceptionalism, with those things that you named.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's sort of the underpinnings of it.
yeah.
I think if you look at what, and I was looking into the definition of it the other day, it was like, what is American exceptionalism? It's this idea that we're different and better sometimes. And it comes across as being somewhat arrogant, but I think the rest of the world would agree that there are distinct differences between certain American companies and corporations and how they operate versus other companies. In fact, that style of operating has been exported to other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then the idea of the dynamism, the independence, the freedom that we enjoy, we use to some degree to pursue this ideal, either in ourselves or in our communities or in whatever endeavor we have, whatever it is, to try new things. We do that quite a lot. Uh, and it's because of this history. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's something to that.
Yes, absolutely. And so stay tuned for the next podcast. We will pick up there in the next one. We're going to be talking about American exceptionalism. Well, Arthur, I think this is we've reached the stopping point here.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
turn my air conditioning down a little bit, get it down to about 71 or 70 degrees.
Good for you. I've had my AC on all the time, nonstop. I just have it on really low because that's the thing is, they'll tell you here, if you leave the house, turn off the AC. I'm like, why? It is so hot that all you're doing is you're causing the house to heat up when you get home. Then you have to blast the AC. Blasting the AC is actually not good for the AC. It's actually better to just always constantly maintain a certain temperature so that you're not taxing the system. But they will leave the house and it'll get really hot, and then I once checked into a place where it was so hot that it took literally like 24 hours to cool the place because the AC just, I mean, the walls were hot. It's like you're living in a tagine.
Yeah, if you're living in a big place, I mean, you're right. It takes a while and we tend to have larger homes in the U.S. than other places.
Yeah.
Not everywhere. People
Yeah.
still live in condos. They still live in apartments. There's many people living in major cities in apartments and small condos. But if you're living in the suburbs and you got a house, yeah, that's probably not you're not living in a mansion. But here's one thing, and maybe I would take a little bit exception to what you're saying. I don't think we need to keep it on all the time. We have software now, and we have systems in which we can have it go down a bit when we're out of the house. Almost
Oh yeah, smart thermostat. Yeah. Set it at the right temperature. Yes.
Yeah, you just set it so it goes up and down at certain times,
Yeah.
so that when you do get back in the house, it's at a temperature that you want, but it's
Yes.
not on all the time when you're literally no one's there.
Yes, you just set the temperature and you don't have to think about it. Now, maybe it could go up a couple of degrees when you're not home, but I'm talking people here will literally let it go up to 80 degrees in the house if you're not home.
Yeah.
That's not good. If you have it go up just a couple of degrees, that's fine. It's not taxing on the AC system to cool it back down. But let me give you, let me tell you this one story, one bombshell, and then we'll end. But
right.
In LA in the summer, I would not turn off the air conditioning in my car if I'm just going to go into a store for like, let's say an hour or whatever. I'm just gonna, if I'm not parked in a garage, I'm gonna keep my AC running. I'm gonna keep the car on, and I'm gonna keep the AC running, so that when I get back to the car, it's nice and cool. And my friends have said, "You're crazy." And then guess what? The minute they get into my car, they're like, "Oh wow, this is amazing."
Wait, so how long do you leave the car running like that?
I really don't care. I'm gonna just I'm just gonna keep it on because I do not want to get into a hot, miserable car, because I had one of, sometimes like the shifter is so hot it'll burn your hand when or the steering wheel, because I had a car with a wood steering wheel and it would burn. I know that sounds funny, like why would wood conduct heat, but for some reason that steering wheel got really hot. And and I have maybe air vents that are made of real metal, and so when you touch them, they would burn your hand. Anyway, that not is obviously not for safety reasons so much as I just wanted to be comfortable.
Yeah,
and so I wouldn't turn off the. I hope everybody in France just heard that story.
Yeah, so now they kind of discount everything else you said before this.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, there he is, typical American.
Yeah, there it is, and there it is. Yes, I told you it's going to be a bombshell.
All right, thanks. That was great. That was good, Ben.
Yes.
Who knew that we talk so much about just air conditioning and heat? But there it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to another discussion next time. I look forward to that. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion, and I'll do a little bit of background work, see if we have a few good points we can explore.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. See you all next time. Bye-bye.
Take it easy. Bye for now.